Good morning, Rebecca Vigas, the writer whisperer, here on a rainy Thursday morning in South Central Kentucky. And I am without my tea this morning. This will not be a good thing, but we'll get through. I had promised you a talk on genres and what there are for genres. This is the category in which you put the book you're writing. Okay. You can research this. There are lists upon lists upon lists of them. I will give you a few. If you want more, Google it. That's the easiest thing to do. You can write action adventure novels, maybe survival. Okay. Anything that is action, where action is happening, and that is an adventure. Okay. Children's come in 3 categories. You have children's books, which would be picture books, alphabet books, very beginning readers, very simple language. You have beginning chapter books that start in about grade 3, so age 8. And they will go 8 to 10, maybe 11, depending on the abilities of the child. You have middle grades, which start probably 4th grade, so 9 going on 10, and they run up through probably 15. And then you have YA, or young adult, which would start right around 15 and take them right in through college. Okay. You can write coming of age books. Those would hit middle grades, anywhere from 5th grade to 8th, maybe even 9th. Okay. You can write comedy. Comedy can be mystery. Comedy can just be plain funny. Okay. You can write crime and mystery. They kind of go together. And in that, you get police procedural, you get legal, where you're doing the courtroom stuff. You can do detectives, you can do city, you can do rural, or suburban, anything in between there. You can do cozies, which are mysteries in which there is no sex, no violence, no swearing. Okay. You can do the suspense thriller, which would be spies, conspiracies. You might even have financial or legal in that. So there are plenty of different ones. Survival could also be a thriller suspense. You can write fairy tales. You can write fantasy. You can write heroic fantasy, where you have this hero with this impossible job, but he's got to save the day. Superheroes, they're real big. Okay. You can write about the occult in fantasy, magic. You can write about the occult in mystery or suspense or conspiracy. Okay. There's horror, and there can be gothic horror, and that can include ghost stories. Okay. Other worlds, you can write about space. You can write nautical fiction, which is pretty much your pirates. You can write westerns. You can write historical fiction. Historical fiction is romance, mystery, conspiracy, but it has to have a base in history, and those history facts have to be correct. Romance, Regency romance, Gothic romance. Those are your biggest ones. Memoirs are considered fiction because they are your memories, and someone who was right there with you could remember it differently. My youngest sister listened to the replay of the day I talked about personal narratives and pushing my brother down the slide. And she didn't realize I had pushed him. But see, she wasn't born then either. So she had no way of knowing what had actually happened. She only heard bits and pieces afterwards that he'd had a broken leg. No one had told her why. I guess it never really came up in discussion. And so she was pretty amazed at that. When you pick a genre, I want you to read in that genre. Don't say, okay, I'm going to write science fiction and not know anything about A, science, or B, how science fiction works. Steampunk comes under science fiction. Steampunk is modern technology in the Victorian era. Okay, so think on that a little bit, because we have a lot of technology right now that was not available in the Victorian era. Check out the costuming for steampunk, because there's a certain dress that you have in order to write steampunk. You have to know what people dress like. Top hats with gears, or gears made into the right into the cloth. Yeah. It's very interesting, and it's if you do it and do it well, it's very, very interesting read. So it's kind of like combining modern science with the early 1900s or the late 1800s. Yeah. It's amazing. Horror, it's all gruesome. Zombies, ghosts, aliens. Yeah, you can do about anything with that. But read about it so you know what's out there. You are not reading to steal ideas. You are reading to know what else is out there. It's important that you know what's out there, because if you're proposing a book to a publisher, they're going to want you to name 3 authors that your book is similar to. And everybody who writes a mystery puts James Patterson, right? Wrong. Not all mysteries are like that. and you don't want to be the next James Patterson. You do, as far as you want to make the top 10 of the New York Times bestseller list. But you don't want to sound just like James Patterson. That would be horrid. James Patterson does James Patterson. And no two people are going to be like him. And a lot he writes with other authors. So now you got to be two people. It isn't going to work. I write mystery, thriller, suspense when I write for adults, for the most part. Yes, I've read James Patterson, but I don't write like him. I write more like Agatha Christie, more in a methodical type way. My main characters, my detectives, have a method for how they do things. In Secrets, Buck Wise was the chief of police, and he made a list of all the questions he had, and he had to answer them along the way. And then, of course, he came up with more questions until he could finally find out who was the killer. Which, is time consuming. Macy McVannell wants to put up all of her victims on the board and how they interact with their potential suspects. She wants a clear picture of everybody. So she puts them up on a board. And she puts what she knows on a board. That's how she keeps things straight. Forgive me, I have a hair. I think I got it. I hate it when I'm chewing my own hair. Anyway, that's how it works. You have to have a format. There is a method to writing. There is a process. And the first thing you do is you get your idea. That's number one. Then you take your pen and your paper, and it's best to do it on pen and paper, and you write down everything you know about the idea. Because the idea is what you start with. Everything you know about it goes on your sheet of paper. If you only have one or two things that you know about it, next step is research. If you have filled your sheet of paper, then you have to figure out how you're going to put it in a timeline. So this is what we see at the beginning that gets our character in motion. He or she wants something, the main character. What is it they want? How on earth do they get to it at the end? What changes do they undergo as a person? You have to think about that. And I call it a timeline as opposed to an outline. You can outline a book, or you can make a timeline on a piece of cash register tape. This is where you're starting. This is who your character is. This is what we're shooting for. With secrets, I had a dead librarian whom everybody in town loved. Small town, she knows everybody. Everybody knows her. I got a chief of police who has to find out why she's been killed. I have a reporter who's in the police officer's face all the time trying to find out things, almost to the point where he's a nuisance. So, with this officer, dead person needs to find killer. Newspaper guy in the way. What's the deal with him? He's rather new in town. Then there are all the twists and turns and secrets that come out. Not only about the librarian, about the newspaper guy, about several other people, until they get to the end. This involves a senator, the mob, RICO violations, and a hitman. Did I have this all planned out to begin with? No. It took me 3 starts to finally get the start that I needed that would carry the novel all the way through. Librarians tend to know a lot more than you give them credit for. In a small town, the librarian knows pretty much where the skeletons are buried. Kind of like the secretary in an office knows a lot more than you give her credit for, and where the skeletons are buried. So think about all your characters. Secrets had a character that I inadvertently, not intentionally, named after a high school friend. And when this friend read the book, she said, "You didn't really see me as an airhead, did you?" And I said, "No, I was just looking for a name that went together, and Betty Sue did." My friend Betty Sue was nowhere near an airhead. She was highly intelligent. And I told her, I said, "Please don't take offense, because I wasn't even thinking when I did that." She was thrilled because her name was in a book written by her friend. And she told everyone about it. Be careful when you're picking names. I picked a name that I didn't find on a map in Michigan anywhere. because I looked. I picked a name of a town called Oak Grove. Friend of mine read the book and said, Becky, it was just like going home. I said, what do you mean? She said, well, to Oak Grove. And I said, what? Little tiny fly speck of a town, mostly a tourist town on a little river just north of Howell, Michigan. I understand it has a one-lane road going in. It's a one-lane bridge that crosses the river going into Oak Grove. And it's more of a touristy town. I have not been there. It's on my bucket list to one time visit Oak Grove, Michigan, because I never, ever realized it was there. Most of the time, I don't use actual places. The Macy McVannell series starts with River's Edge. That is the name of the town. And it is very, very loosely based on the small town that I lived in at the time. They were heartbroken when I gave them a couple copies of the Macy series, the first two books in the Macy series, for the library in Gaylord, Michigan. McVannell is a Gaylord name. The McVannells were a prominent family in Gaylord, still are. One of them is the sheriff, the county sheriff. But I did not base my book in Gaylord, not even loosely. I didn't think about it, or I probably would have. In fact, I probably could have accurately placed it in Gaylord, but I didn't. And they were a little heartbroken at that. So, now that you have your genres, where is yours going to fit? Where is your story going to fit? Because you need to know that. You need to know at least 3 authors who have comparable works to yours, so that when you present to an agent or a publishing company, you've got those 3 authors and their statistics. You can get them right from Amazon. That's simple enough. I'm going to put your writing prompt in the comments because I was running late this morning. I have surgery tomorrow morning, and the surgery center called me at 8:30 this morning, and we spent a half an hour on the phone, which is a half an hour I hadn't allowed for, or I'd have been up earlier this morning. So we're still in change of season. We left off with the waning of summer, and now we'll go to the next one, which is, no, we left off with the killing season, didn't we? To be live on a, no, that seems like we did that one. We did do that one. We left off on the waning of summer. Okay, so we have the shadows that live in winter. We have leaves. Are the verbs. That conjugate for all you grammar people. The seasons. And that is after Gretel Ehrlich. And we have this is the way my fingers don't want to type this morning. Spring came. And the fourth one, the air was different that summer. 5, right, of flurrying snow. 6, second here, I did something wrong. Here we go. March, sky, cold as a hare's paw. After Ann Carson. Write about an Indian summer. How many of you don't know what an Indian summer is? Indian summer is usually in October, early October. And it usually comes after a week or two that are very, very cold. In fact, it could get down to freezing. And then all of a sudden, it's in the 70s and 80s again. This is the season of my birth. What is your birth season? Number 9, write about locusts at the edge of summer. And that one is after John Balaban or Balaban. Okay. And the last one is, this will be fun. Summer's growing up. Pick one, just one. Please don't try and do all 10. That would be insane. Even I wouldn't do all 10. I don't know anything about locusts at the end of the summer. I have never lived where there are locusts. Couldn't tell you what one was. Cicadas now, that's something different. No cicadas in Michigan. First time I heard them, I was in Arizona, and it sounded like all the wires were buzzing when you stepped outside. I moved down here, and that first summer, I stepped outside for something, and a friend of mine was here, and she said, "What is that horrid sound?" I said, "Horrid sound? Oh, you mean the cicadas?" Because all the trees are like buzzing. It's like this electrical current all the time. I could write about the cicadas, but don't ask me to write about the locusts. I don't know about them. So, I will not be here tomorrow or Friday. I will be back on Monday. Please put your questions in the comments. I look forward to them. I'd love to be able to answer questions for you. And happy writing. See you Monday.